Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review the new documentary, A Glitch in the Matrix. And this is from Rodney Ascher, who also did the documentary Room 237, which I haven't seen, heard a lot about. Obviously, I'm a big fan of The Shining, and from what I understand, this documentary is a bunch of people with their conspiracy theories about what The Shining is about, what Kubrick was trying to say, and from what I understand, it's just basically Rodney Ascher just lets these people just free will just go. And they just ramble and they go on and on and on. And a lot of it, the logic doesn't make sense. And it's not challenged and it's just presented that way. And which sounds like it's a bit of a mess of a film. But I've never watched it. But I have watched A Glitch in the Matrix. And taking the idea of let's pose a question. Are we living in a simulation? And just let all of these people tell their perspectives on it. And in a bigger sense, this film, I feel like, does attempt to have a focus. And it does allow all of these different people, Ascher allows each of these different perspectives to come on and tell what they're feeling and where they're coming from. But by the end, and it's told in chapters, and in this last chapter, the conclusion, if applicable, you have what seems to be a narrowing of the point, and you're like, okay, so he allows all of this to happen, and then he frames it in a way that it's like, hey, this person might not have been in the right headspace. This could just be this one person's perspective and how they see the world. And you're like, okay, so it's presenting, we don't live in a simulation, but a lot of people have these perspectives, so let's respect them and think about them and try to think and grasp why they see it this way. And then bam, you think it's over. And one of the issues with this film is, like, this is almost 2 hours and it just keeps going at points, and this conclusion keeps going and then unravels itself to, like, the last thing that you get is, but what if we were? And I'm just like, so if you're going into this documentary hoping for a cohesive point, so, like, there's different kinds of documentaries. There's documentaries that just look at somebody and see the world that they're living in and allows us to go in and embody it. That's not this. You also have documentaries where it's trying to prove a point and you show different sides of this point. That's what this documentary is attempting to be. It shows a lot of different perspectives, but it never really focuses enough or allows itself to come up with a conclusion. And the fact that it says it has a conclusion, there was no conclusion. It set up one and then just threw, it's like, oh, but what of this? So basically it just continued the rest of the film, which was just, let's go back and forth between this person thinks this person thinks this. And a lot of these people and what they're talking about don't really contribute to the bigger idea of, do we live in a simulation? And because a lot of these stories don't make sense. There's no logic to them. And, like, I know there's one story in it about, like, a drunken joyride and a car crash, and basically their argument is, like, Deus Ex Machina exists, so it must be a simulation. This must be programmed this way. And it's just like, okay, but it's not portrayed in a way that makes sense. Like, you just tell this story and it's like, oh, and that's why we live in a simulation. Okay, I've listened to your story, which, like, this film could have benefited from editing more. Like, that story probably didn't need to be in this film because it didn't add anything to it. But there are interesting perspectives that are shown throughout. And it's hard because it's like you have these perspectives of people that are actually believing that I've had this evidence that I live in a simulation. They have a couple of people who are a couple of men that are showing these animated avatars, which this film is very visually intriguing, and I appreciated that about this film. And they have interesting ways of portraying storytelling, and that's a big positive that I give Ascher a lot of credit for in this film. It's visually intriguing to watch. But you have these different people that are talking about, like, I started taking ticks and patterns over the course of 12 days, and every third day something happened at my work that was a positive. And you're like, the film's interesting in the fact that you're getting inside the head of a lot of people. And deep inside the head of, there's one scene in this film that depicts an actual shooting because it's the murderer who is telling the story and everything, and it's haunting. And they build up the suspense, and that scene is so effective in building up tension and suspense. But it's also really hard to watch because it's like, and I feel some ways about that scene being included in this film because it feels manipulative to put something like that in this film. And it's really haunting. And I've seen some reviews that it's like, oh, this film is fun and silly, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, did you watch that scene? Because that wasn't fun and silly. Like, sitting there listening to a young man who's now in prison and won't be out for like 20-something years describe how he murdered his parents to very, very detailed levels is really uncomfortable and unnerving. And that's, like, I feel like there could have been some better judgment in what scenes to include, but, like, that's one of the most memorable scenes in the film, but did that really, like, need to be included? And you have something like that because it's reinforcing the other perspective, is that most of this film you have a bunch of people who are talking about, I have found this evidence, I've witnessed this in my own life, and then there's perspectives on other, like, famous people, ideas, and art. You have Elon Musk, and they talk about Elon Musk a lot in this film because Elon Musk goes around talking about, like, we could be living in a simulation. And somebody's like, what if Elon Musk is like the Minecraft avatar and we're all just the villagers? And he gets to go back to his real world and laugh about all of us when he talks about his friends because he was just in our simulation. I'm just like, okay. It's like, this film's interesting to just even take in and hear from different people about these ideas. And then there's a lot that relies upon, oh my god, the Matrix is here to, like, open our eyes to this. And it's just like, it's a science fiction film. And, like, this is how we got Scientology. Like, somebody read science fiction and L. Ron Hubbard's like, I'm going to make a religion out of this. A lot of people watch The Matrix and believe this is our proof that we live in a simulation. Or it could just be that somebody had a cool idea. It's like, wouldn't this be cool? And made that. And they show, like, Dark City and The Truman Show. And Philip K. Dick is a big part of this. And it's interesting listening to him speak and all the ideas that he had that led to a lot of his writing, which I'm a huge fan of his writing. And the adaptations of his writing. And it's intriguing, like Minority Report and, like, Blade Runner. And looking at those different things and seeing how his perspective led to, like, The Man in the High Castle. All these different kinds of things. And it's intriguing to listen to him talk about that. And it's, like, actual footage of him speaking. And then it goes back to, like, The Cave from, like, ancient Greece. And that's, like, that idea of this simulated life. And it's just like, yes, these are ideas. They're allegories. It's an allegory in the cave. And you have these different pieces of art that are great and are thought-provoking. But does that tell us, like, hey, this is how things really are? And you're sitting there like, okay, this film presents a lot of different ideas. And it's a bit muddled. But in the end, I can't say that I wasn't enthralled and intrigued watching this documentary from start to finish. It was a bit long, it's a bit messy, it's a bit all over the place, and it doesn't really come to any kind of conclusion. It feels like it's a bit of a cop-out because it's just like, well, here's all these things. But it was entertaining. and it accomplished a lot of different things. It made me feel some things and think about things. But I don't think it's waking me up from the Matrix. But those are my thoughts on A Glitch in the Matrix. Let me know what you think. This is definitely something I'd like to talk to people about, so leave it in the comments. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.